The air in the RAC Arena in Perth, Western Australia, was electric, a tangible entity shimmering under the billion-dollar lighting rig of WWE's Crown Jewel. Every event of this magnitude carries its own unique atmosphere, a cocktail of anticipation, hero worship, and a primal thirst for conflict. But this night felt different. This wasn't just another premium live event. It was a convergence of storylines, a pressure cooker for feuds that had been simmering for months, threatening to boil over in spectacular fashion. At the heart of this simmering cauldron was one man, the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. For over a year, Reigns had been on a journey of rediscovery. Dethroned from his historic championship reign by Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, he was no longer the undisputed king, but his aura remained undiminished. He was still the needle mover, the final boss, the gravitational center of the WWE universe. His presence alone transformed a match into a main event, a segment into a must-see moment. His opponent for the night, Bronson Reed, was a colossus carved from the rugged Australian landscape itself. This was a homecoming for Reed, a chance to perform on the grandest stage in his home country, a moment he had undoubtedly dreamed of since his early days wrestling in front of sparse crowds in local halls. Reed was a man with a point to prove. He was more than just a powerhouse. He was a deceptively agile, cunning, and brutally effective competitor. Their previous encounter had ended in a victory for Reigns, but not without a cost. Reed had left the original tribal chief on a stretcher, a statement of intent that echoed through the weeks leading to this rematch. This time, the stakes were amplified by the stipulation, an Australian street fight. No rules, no disqualifications, no mercy. It was a canvas perfectly suited for the brand of brutality both men were known for. In the locker room and among the roaring crowds, the narrative seemed clear. This was Roman Reigns' test of resilience. Could he, without the undisputed title around his waist and with cracks showing in his fabled bloodline, reassert his dominance? For Bronson Reed, it was a test of legitimacy. Could he finally break through the glass ceiling and defeat a bona fide legend in his own backyard, cementing his place in the upper echelon of WWE? The whispers, however, hinted at something more complex. The Bloodline saga, the most compelling long-form story in modern wrestling, was a living, breathing thing. Jey Uso, once Roman's most defiant adversary and then his most loyal soldier, was back in the fold alongside his brother Jimmy. But the scars of their civil war remained. Trust was a fragile commodity, earned in blood and easily lost in a moment of miscalculation. Elsewhere, a new force of nature was carving a path of destruction through the roster. Bron Breakker. The former NXT champion wrestled with a ferocity that bordered on the terrifying, a pit bull in a world of showdogs. His trajectory was aimed squarely at the top, and Roman Reigns was the ultimate symbol of that peak. The question no one was asking, but everyone should have been, was not if outside forces would play a role, but when and how devastatingly. The stage was set, the weapons were waiting under the ring, and two warriors were ready for a war. The WWE Universe held its collective breath, blissfully unaware they were about to witness not just a match, but an implosion. The moment the bell rang, the pretense of a traditional wrestling match evaporated. This was never going to be about technical holds or intricate reversals. It was about pure, unadulterated destruction. Roman Reigns, a master of pacing and storytelling, met Bronson Reed's explosive power with a calculated, vicious offense. He knew he couldn't match Reed's raw strength pound for pound in a pure hoss fight, so he relied on his experience and the environment the stipulation provided. The area around the ring became a treasure trove of torment. A steel trash can, a common prop in such matches, became an instrument of percussive punishment in Roman's hands, its metallic clang echoing Reed's grunts of pain. But Reed was far from a passive victim. He absorbed the punishment with a grimace, his eyes burning with the fire of a man fueled by hometown adrenaline. The fight quickly spilled to the outside, a chaotic dance among the announce tables and steel steps. It was here that the Australian part of the street fight came into play. Reigns, with a smirk, that was equal parts arrogance and respect for the stipulation, produced a cricket bat. The Perth crowd roared in a mixture of shock and delight. The sharp, unfamiliar crack of wood against Reed's colossal frame was a sound that underscored the unique brutality of the moment. Reigns followed up with a kendo stick, laying in shot after shot, trying to chop the big man down, to cripple the base that made Reed's power so formidable. For a while it seemed to be working. Reigns was in control, a predator toying with his powerful but outmaneuvered prey. He was dominating the pace, dictating the terms of engagement, reminding everyone why he was the tribal chief. But Bronson Reed is a force of nature, and you can only contain a tsunami for so long. He weathered the storm, his body absorbing the punishment, and began to mount his comeback. A thunderous body block sent Reigns flying. A Samoan drop on the arena floor knocked the wind out of the former champion. Reed was now in his element. He moved with a speed that defied his size, a runaway freight train of a man. He slammed Reigns into the barricade, then onto the unforgiving steel steps. The momentum had shifted dramatically. The hunter had become the hunted. Reed, feeding off the energy of his countrymen, was a man possessed. He dismantled the top of the announce table, his intentions clear. He wanted to punctuate his dominance, to create a moment that would be replayed for years to come. He hoisted Reigns onto his shoulders, the powerbomb imminent. The crowd was on its feet, sensing a major turning point. But it was at this precise moment of impending victory for Reed that the match's narrative took a sharp, violent, and unforgettable turn. The chaos was no longer contained to just two men. A new player had entered the game. He didn't come down the ramp with pyrotechnics or a grand entrance theme. He appeared as if spawned from the shadows of the crowd itself. A figure in black, moving with explosive purpose, hopped the barricade. For a split second there was confusion. A fan? Security? Then the arena lights caught the familiar menacing scowl and the powerhouse physique. It was Bron Breakker. The collective gasp of the Perth audience was instantaneous. Breakker had no storyline connection to this match, no announced reason to be there. His presence was a violation of the expected order, a rogue variable thrown into an already volatile equation. His target was singular and unmistakable. Bypassing Bronson Reed entirely, Breakker charged forward like a guided missile and delivered a spear of catastrophic force to Roman Reigns. The impact was sickening. Reigns, already dazed on Reed's shoulders, was blindsided, folded in half by a man who had seemingly perfected the move made famous by Roman's own family. The crowd erupted, no longer just watching a match but witnessing an ambush. What were Breakker's motives? Was this an alliance with Reed? Was he a hired gun for some unseen enemy? Or was this simply a statement? In the world of WWE, the surest way to make a name for yourself is to go after the biggest dog in the yard, and for a decade, that dog had been Roman Reigns. Breakker wasn't just interrupting a match, he was hijacking the main event, inserting himself into the top of the card with one devastating act of violence. He was announcing his arrival not by asking for a spot, but by taking it by force. Bronson Reed, momentarily stunned by the unexpected assistance, quickly regained his composure. An opportunist at heart, he recognized the advantage. He and Breakker, a newly formed and terrifyingly powerful alliance, hoisted the downed Reigns. With a joint effort that showcased their monstrous strength, they powerbombed the tribal chief through the now cleared announce table. The structure exploded in a shower of wood splinters and shattered monitors. The referee, powerless in a no disqualification environment, could only look on in horror. The match had descended from a brutal street fight into a public mugging. Reigns was down, seemingly out, at the mercy of two of the most destructive forces on the roster. The scene was one of utter devastation. Roman's control was shattered, his body broken on the wreckage of the table. The Perth crowd was in a frenzy, witnessing the potential end of an era at the hands of an unexpected and utterly ruthless usurper. It was a moment of pure shock value, but it was also a tipping point. For in the chaos, a familiar theme music hit the speakers, signaling that this 2-on-1 assault was about to become a 4-man war zone. The Bloodline was coming. The iconic opening notes of the Usos' theme sent another jolt through the arena. Down the ramp stormed Jimmy and Jey Uso, their faces masks of grim determination. They were not here to wrestle, they were here to fight, to save their cousin from the mauling he was enduring. The sight of his family gave Roman a flicker of life, and for a moment, it seemed the odds were evened. The Usos hit the ring like a whirlwind of super kicks and fists, driving Breakker and Reed back, creating a pocket of space for Roman to recover. The battle lines were drawn. On one side, the makeshift but monstrously powerful duo of Breakker and Reed. On the other, the fractured but still formidable family unit of the Bloodline. The action was frantic and almost impossible to follow. Jimmy Uso engaged in a wild brawl with Breakker, their fight spilling back out of the ring. Inside the squared circle, Jey Uso stood side by side with a staggering Roman Reigns, ready to face Bronson Reed. The crowd was deafening, the atmosphere thick with tension. It was a moment ripe for a heroic comeback, for the Bloodline to stand tall against the invaders. But the ghosts of their past, the mistrust and miscommunication that had defined their civil war, chose this exact moment to reappear. As Bronson Reed charged forward, Jey Uso saw an opening. With a primal yell, he launched himself forward, coiling his body to deliver his own signature spear. A move to end the threat of Reed and pave the way for a Roman victory. It was a move born of instinct and loyalty. It was also a move that would seal his cousin's fate. In that split second, timing and communication broke down completely. Roman, perhaps moving to set up his own spear, took a half step into the path. Bronson Reed, with the ring awareness of a veteran, sidestepped with surprising agility. The result was a catastrophe. Jey Uso, flying through the air with the force of a battering ram, had nothing but his tribal chief in his sights. He connected with Roman Reigns with the full, devastating impact of his spear. The collision was horrific. Roman's body contorted as he was driven backward, crashing through a table that had been propped up in the corner earlier in the match. The sound of splintering wood was drowned out by the collective, agonizing groan of thousands of fans. Jey Uso looked down at his hands, then at his fallen cousin amidst the wreckage, his face a portrait of pure, unadulterated horror. He hadn't just made a mistake, he had committed the ultimate sin. He had, with his own signature move, single-handedly destroyed the man he had come to save. The betrayal was accidental, but the consequences were absolute. The chaos had reached its crescendo, leaving nothing but stunned silence and the wreckage of a family. The scene in the ring was one of surreal stillness after a moment of pure pandemonium. Jey Uso was on his knees, paralyzed by disbelief. Jimmy Uso, having been taken out at ringside by Bron Breakker, was a non-factor. Roman Reigns was a broken heap in the corner, tangled in the remnants of the table, his eyes glazed over. For Bronson Reed, this was not a moment for sympathy or reflection. It was the moment of a lifetime. The chaos had presented him with an opportunity on a silver platter, and he was not about to let it slip through his fingers. He stalked toward the downed tribal chief, the architect of this beautiful disaster. With a final guttural roar, Reed dragged Reigns' lifeless body from the corner and into the center of the ring. The climb to the top rope was methodical, almost ceremonial. Each step he took up the turnbuckle was another nail in Roman's coffin for the night. The Perth crowd, which had been in a state of shock, began to realize what they were about to witness. This was it. This was the finish. Poised on the top rope, Bronson Reed looked out at his people, a conquering hero returning home. He launched his massive frame into the air, a breathtaking display of agility for a man his size, and came crashing down with the full force of his tsunami splash. There was no kick-out. There was no last-second save. The referee's hand hit the mat. 1, 2, 3. It was over. Bronson Reed had pinned Roman Reigns. The arena erupted. Bronson Reed, in his home country, had achieved the biggest victory of his career. He had defeated the man who had defined an era. His celebration was a release of years of hard work and frustration, a roar of triumph that was echoed by his countrymen. But as Reed stood tall, another, more compelling drama was unfolding. A furious Roman Reigns was slowly pulling himself up, his face a thunderous mask of rage and betrayal. He locked eyes with Jey Uso, who was still trying to process what had happened. There were no words at first, only a look of such profound disappointment and anger that it was more cutting than any insult. Roman stumbled to his feet, shoving aside Jimmy, who had come to help him. He got in Jey's face, the veins in his neck bulging as he finally spoke, his voice raspy but dripping with venom. The words were inaudible to the cameras, but the meaning was clear. I didn't need you. I never needed you. He turned his back on his cousins and limped out of the ring alone, leaving the Usos standing in the middle of the ring, shattered and defeated in a match they weren't even in. The Bloodline, once the most dominant faction in WWE history, had not just been cracked, it had been publicly and humiliatingly broken. In the days and weeks following Crown Jewel, the shockwaves of that main event continued to ripple through the entire WWE landscape. The outcome was far more significant than a single loss on Roman Reigns' record. It was a paradigm shift that has thrown the futures of 4 top superstars, and arguably the entire company, into a state of thrilling uncertainty. For Bronson Reed, the victory was a coronation. He is no longer just a colossal threat. He is a certified main event player, a man who holds a victory over the tribal chief. This legitimizes him in a way no number of impressive powerhouse displays ever could. He now has a claim, a right to challenge for any championship he desires. He is a made man, and his future path seems paved with gold. For Bron Breakker, his mission was an unmitigated success. In the span of about 5 minutes, he injected himself into the most significant storyline in wrestling, laid out the biggest star, and established himself as an apex predator who operates on his own terms. His alliance with Reed may be one of convenience, but a monsters ball tag team of the two seems like a terrifying prospect for the rest of the tag division. More likely, however, is that Breakker has put himself on a collision course with Reigns, a dream match that now has a foundation built on genuine animosity. But the most compelling fallout, as always, revolves around the Bloodline. Roman Reigns' solitary exit was a powerful statement. His declaration that he didn't need the Usos was a direct echo of his early tribal chief days, a regression to the tyrant who demanded loyalty but offered none in return. This raises the question, is this the end of the Bloodline as we know it? Jey Uso is once again at a crossroads. His mistake, though accidental, was unforgivable in Roman's eyes. Does he once again try to earn his way back into Roman's good graces, subjecting himself to more manipulation and abuse? Or does this finally push him away for good, reigniting the main event Jey persona that first challenged Roman for his throne? The tension between the brothers and their cousin is now at an all-time high, creating a powder keg that could explode at any moment, with Survivor Series and its iconic War Games matches looming on the horizon. A potential War Games match feels almost inevitable. One can easily envision a team led by Roman Reigns, perhaps with new allies, facing off against a team captained by Jey Uso, who might find himself aligned with past enemies like Cody Rhodes or Sami Zayn out of sheer necessity. And where do Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker fit into this? They are the wild cards, the agents of chaos who could align with either side, or, more frighteningly, form their own team to simply destroy everyone else. The entire power structure of WWE has been destabilized. The tribal chief has shown vulnerability, his family is in shambles, and 2 new monsters are circling the wreckage, hungry for more. The shocking engagement at Crown Jewel wasn't an ending. It was a violent, chaotic, and brilliant new beginning. The road to WrestleMania has officially begun, and for the first time in a long time, the path is completely unpredictable.